In July of 2016, something strange happened on Netflix. A quiet little science fiction show with no massive marketing campaign suddenly exploded across the world. Within weeks, millions of viewers were binge watching a story about missing kids, secret government experiments, and terrifying alternative dimensions known as Upside Down. This show was Stranger Things. What started as a nostalgic love letter to 1980s science fiction quickly became one of the most successful television series ever created. The show launched the careers of its young cast, redefined Netflix's dominance in streaming, and created one of the most passionate fan bases in modern entertainment. But Stranger Things didn't just appear overnight. Behind its success lies a fascinating story of creative vision, perseverance, and deep understanding of storytelling that taps into childhood wonder, fear of the unknown, and the power of friendship. This video explores the complete story of Stranger Things, from the original idea behind the show, to its development and creation, to the evolution of its characters and monsters, and ultimately why it became one of the defining television series of modern era. We'll explore the mind behind the series, the unforgettable characters that fans fell in love with, the terrifying creatures that haunt the Upside Down, and the cultural impact that transformed Stranger Things into a global phenomenon. This is the story of Stranger Things. The creators of Stranger Things are identical twin brothers named Matt and Ross Duffer, more commonly known as the Duffer Brothers. Long before Stranger Things became a cultural phenomenon, the Duffer Brothers were simply two filmmakers with a passion for storytelling. They grew up in North Carolina during the 80s and 90s, and like many kids of the era, they were obsessed with movies. Their childhood was filled with VHS tapes of classic films by directors like Steven Spielberg, John Carpenter, and George Lucas. Films like E.T., Close Encounters of the Third Kind, The Thing, and The Goonies shaped their imagination. These movies, as many would agree, are something special. They combine childhood adventure with supernatural mystery. Kids were the heroes, not just the side characters, and the stories balanced heartwarming friendships with genuine terror. Years later, the Duffer Brothers wanted to recreate that feeling. They wanted to tell the story that captures the magic of the 1980s storytelling, but with a darker, modern twist. Their idea was simple yet powerful. What if a young boy vanished under mysterious circumstances into a quiet small town, and his disappearance uncovered something far more sinister, something supernatural, something hiding just beneath the surface of reality? This concept would eventually become Stranger Things. But getting the show made was far from easy. In fact, when the Duffer Brothers first pitched the series, it was rejected by nearly every major television network. More than 20 networks turned down the idea. Many executives simply didn't believe a show centered around children could carry a dark science fiction story. Others thought audiences wouldn't care about a slow burn mystery set in the 1980s. But Netflix saw potential. At the time, Netflix was aggressively expanding its original content. The streaming service was looking for unique shows that felt cinematic and binge-worthy. Stranger Things was exactly that. Netflix approved the show in 2015. Production began shortly afterward. And the Duffer Brothers were about to create something far bigger than anyone imagined. Hawkins appears ordinary at first glance. It's a quiet Midwestern town with tree-lined streets, modest homes, and friendly neighbors. But hidden within Hawkins lies a dark secret. Just outside town sits Hawkins National Laboratory, a government research facility conducting classified experiments. These experiments involve something extremely dangerous: the manipulation of human consciousness and psychic abilities. And eventually these experiments open a doorway to another dimension, a twisted mirror world known as the Upside Down. It's a dark reflection of Hawkins, covered in toxic spores, crawling vines, and shadowy creatures. Everything there feels corrupted, rotting, and alive in ways that feel deeply unnatural. The Upside Down isn't just a place, it's an ecosystem, and something inside of it wants to invade the world. The story of Stranger Things begins with a mystery. One night on November 6, 1983, a young boy named Will Byers vanishes. Will is an ordinary kid. He loves comic books, playing Dungeons and Dragons with friends, and spending time riding bikes around Hawkins. But after leaving his friend's house one night, something happens. As Will rides through the dark woods, he senses something following him. A shadow, a presence. Moments later, he disappears without a trace. The disappearance of Will Byers becomes the central mystery of Season 1. His mother, Joyce Byers, becomes convinced that something supernatural has taken her son. While most of the town believes Will is dead, Joyce refuses to give up, and slowly, she begins receiving strange signals. Lights flicker in her home. Electrical disturbances occur. Eventually, Joyce realizes that Will may still be alive, communicating from somewhere else, somewhere beyond reality. While adults search for Will, the heart of Stranger Things lies with the group of 4 friends. These 4 boys form the emotional backbone of the series. Mike Wheeler, the natural leader of the group, Dustin Henderson, a lovable comic relief with endless curiosity, Lucas Sinclair, this skeptical realist who keeps the group grounded, and Will Byers, the gentle and imaginative heart of the friendship. Their bond is built on childhood adventure, Dungeons and Dragons campaigns, bike rides through Hawkins, late night conversations about monsters and alternative dimensions. Ironically, those childhood fantasies began to become a reality. Because shortly after Will disappears, the boys encounter a mysterious girl wandering alone in the woods. A girl with a shaved head, a hospital gown, and extraordinary psychic powers. Her name was 11. 11 became one of the most iconic characters in television history. Played by Millie Bobby Brown, 11 is a young girl who escaped from the Hawkins lab. She possesses powerful psychic abilities. Telekinesis, remote viewing, mind control, but her powers came at a terrible cost. 11 spent her childhood as a test subject in secret government experiments led by Dr. Martin Brenner. Inside Hawkins' lab, she was stripped of her identity and referred to only by a number. Through traumatic experiments, scientists attempted to weaponize her abilities, but during one of the experiments, something went terribly wrong. 11 accidentally opened a portal to the Upside Down, and something on the other side came through. A creature that would soon become the first terrifying monster of the series, the Demogorgon. The Demogorgon is the primary antagonist in Season 1. Its appearance is instantly recognizable. A tall humanoid creature with elongated limbs and a horrifying flower-like mouth filled with teeth. But what makes the Demogorgon terrifying isn't just its appearance. It hunts, it stalks, it drags victims into the Upside Down. The creature exists between dimensions, slipping through temporary tears in reality. Its arrival in Hawkins begins a chain reaction of supernatural events. People begin disappearing. The barrier between worlds grows weaker, and the town of Hawkins slowly becomes the center of something far more dangerous than anyone realizes. But the Demogorgon is only the beginning, because beyond it lies something far more powerful, something ancient, something intelligent, something that controls the entire Upside Down, the Mind Flayer. By the end of Stranger Things' first season, the town of Hawkins had already been permanently changed. Will Byers has been rescued from the Upside Down thanks to the efforts of his friends, his mother Joyce, and the town's reluctant hero, Police Chief Jim Hopper. But even though Will had returned home, something was still wrong. The Upside Down had not truly been closed, and the connection between the two worlds was still very alive. The final moments of Season 1 hinted at something darker still to come. Will suddenly coughed up a small slug-like creature into the sink in his bathroom, a disturbing reminder that the horrors of the Upside Down were not finished with him. This moment set the stage for the next chapter of the story. Season 2 of Stranger Things expanded the mythology of the Upside Down dramatically. The true villain of the series began to reveal itself, a massive, ancient entity known as the Mind Flayer. Unlike the Demogorgon, which behaves like a predator, the Mind Flayer operates like a commander. It's an enormous, shadow-like creature that towers above the Upside Down, resembling a dark storm cloud shaped into a monstrous spider. But its greatest weapon is control. The Mind Flayer possesses the ability to control other creatures within the Upside Down, like a hive mind, demigorgons, demigods, and eventually even humans. During Season 2, Will Byers becomes the Mind Flayer's unwilling host. After his traumatic experience in the Upside Down, Will develops a psychic connection with the creature. The Mind Flayer uses this connection to spy on the real world and slowly prepare for invasion. The show begins exploring one of its deepest themes, the psychological toll of trauma. Will isn't just a victim of a supernatural horror. He's a child dealing with something no one else can fully understand. Season 2 also introduced several new characters who became fan favorites. One of the most important additions was Max Mayfield, a tough and confident new student in Hawkins who quickly joins the friend group. Her complicated relationship with her older stepbrother, Billy Hargrove, introduces a darker family dynamic into the show. Billy initially appears as an aggressive bully, but his character would later evolve into one of the most tragic arcs in the series. Meanwhile, another surprising transformation occurs with Steve Harrington. In Season 1, Steve initially appeared to be the stereotypical popular high school jerk, but as the series continued, he slowly became one of the most beloved characters. Steve transitions from arrogant teenager to protective older brother figure of the younger kids. Armed with nothing but a baseball bat and a questionable bravery, Steve repeatedly throws himself into danger to protect others. His character arc became one of the most unexpected highlights of the entire show. By the time Season 3 arrived in 2019, Stranger Things had already become one of Netflix's biggest hits, and the scope of the show expanded dramatically. Season 3 introduces the Starcourt Mall, a massive shopping center that represents the consumer boom of the 1980s. The mall becomes the new social center of Hawkins, but beneath its colorful neon lights lies another dangerous secret, a hidden Russian laboratory. Yes, the Cold War becomes a major part of Stranger Things' storyline. Soviet scientists are secretly attempting to reopen the gateway to the Upside Down beneath Hawkins. Their experiments succeed, and once again the barrier between worlds begins to break. But this time, the Mind Flayer finds a new and terrifying strategy. Instead of controlling creatures from the Upside Down, it begins possessing humans. One of the most emotional stories of Season 3 centers around Billy Hargrove. The Mind Flayer captures Billy early in the season and slowly takes control of him. Billy becomes the Mind Flayer's primary agent in Hawkins. He begins abducting people and bringing them to the creature. These victims are eventually consumed by the Mind Flayer's growing physical form. The result is one of the most disturbing monsters in the entire series, a grotesque creature built from melted human bodies. But Billy's story ends with redemption. In the final battle of Starcourt Mall, Eleven reminds Billy of the childhood memories, the one moment of happiness he experienced with his mother at the beach. That memory breaks through the Mind Flayer's control, and in a final act of courage, Billy sacrifices himself to protect Eleven. It's one of the most emotional moments throughout the entire series. At the end of Season 3, another devastating moment occurs. During the destruction of the Russian machine attempting to open the Upside Down gate, Chief Jim Hopper appears to sacrifice himself in order to save everyone. The explosion destroys the machine, but Hopper seemingly disappears. His death leaves Eleven devastated, and it marks the end of an era for the characters of Hawkins, or so it seemed. When Stranger Things returned for Season 4, the show took a much darker and more ambitious direction. The new villain introduced in Season 4 was unlike anything seen before. His name is Vecna. Unlike the Demogorgon or the Mind Flayer, Vecna is not simply a monster. Vecna was once human. His real name was Henry Creel. Henry was a child with powerful psychic abilities similar to Eleven, but his powers came with a dark and violent nature. After committing horrific acts as a child, Henry was taken to Hawkins' lab and placed under the supervision of Dr. Brenner. There he became the very first test subject, Subject 001. Years later, Henry manipulates Eleven into removing a control chip placed inside him by the lab. Freed from the chip, Henry unleashes his true power and massacres the other children in the facility. But Eleven defeats him in a massive psychic battle. She opens a portal that throws Henry into the Upside Down. The dimensional energy transforms him into a twisted creature known as Vecna. This revelation completely reshapes the mythology of Stranger Things. Vecna is not just another monster, he is the architect of much of the horror within the Upside Down. At the end of Season 4, the world of Hawkins has forever changed. After the brutal psychic battle between Eleven and Vecna, the villain's plan partially succeeded. Although Vecna was temporarily defeated, his actions triggered a catastrophic event that ripped open multiple gateways between Hawkins and the Upside Down. For the first time, the barrier separating the two worlds completely collapsed. As Season 5 begins, Hawkins is no longer the quiet small town it once was. Cracks in reality stretch across the landscape, ash falls from the sky, and the dark influence of the Upside Down slowly spreads into the real world. The town has effectively become ground zero for approaching supernatural apocalypse. Meanwhile, the group of friends who faced those horrors for years must reunite for one final battle. Mike, Dustin, Lucas, and Will once again stand together, but they're older, more experienced, and fully aware of what they're up against. Will, who spent time trapped in the Upside Down during the first season, may hold the key to understanding Vecna's ultimate plan. His lingering connection to the dimension suggests that he may be more deeply tied to the enemy than anyone realizes. At the center of the story remains Eleven. Her psychic powers are the only force strong enough to challenge Vecna, returning to many of the mysteries included from the very first season. The origins of the Upside Down, the true nature of Vecna's power, and the fate of Hawkins are finally being revealed. So why did Stranger Things become one of the biggest series of all time? The answer lies in several key factors. First, the show perfectly captures nostalgia. The 1980s settling allows series to draw inspiration from classic films, music, and pop culture of the era. From synth-heavy soundtracks to arcade games and BMX bikes, the show recreates the feeling of childhood adventure. Second, the characters feel authentic. The friendships between the kids are believable and heartfelt. Us viewers actually watch these characters grow up on the screen. Actors like Millie, Finn, Gaten, and Caleb became international stars. Even supporting characters like Steve and Robin developed massive fan followings. Third, the storytelling, it constantly evolves. Each season expands the scale of conflict while deepening the emotional stakes. And finally, Stranger Things understands how to balance multiple genres. The show combines horror, science fiction, mystery, comedy, and emotional drama in a way that feels seamless. The popularity of Stranger Things is reflected in its staggering statistics. When Season 4 premiered in 2022, it broke Netflix viewing records. The season accumulated over 1.3 billion hours watched within the first 28 days. It became the second most watched English-language Netflix series of all time. The show had been nominated for dozens of major awards, including multiple Primetime Emmy Awards. In many ways, Stranger Things has become Netflix's version of a blockbuster cinematic universe.